This is Abe Friedtanzer from Lord's Radar, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Adam Godley about The Great. How are you, Adam?
I'm very well, thank you, Abe. How are you doing?
Good, good. You have a little bit more facial hair than I expected because I assumed everything was like having the beard and everything, you'd want to just have nothing on your face when you didn't have to be in that costume.
That is so true. That is so true. The last thing I want is a beard when we finished our 6 month shoot of The Great. Yeah, it's a lot of wig glue and a lot of hours spent in the makeup chair. But I know it's a great look and it goes with the whole thing. But yes, but I'm about to open a musical on Broadway, and the character I play has a bit of a beard, so it's a mini version of what I have in The Great.
How does having all that, on you affect your physical performance?
While we're shooting The Great. It does affect it. I think for any actor, the look, it's the costume, the wig, the hair, everything, the shoes are so integral to how you feel about the character. And we found Archie's look very early on. At first, I was very kind of overwhelmed by it, and I was concerned that it'd be like cousin It in the Addams family, and all you'd see is just sort of ball of hair showing up. And you want to be able to convey a character and subtleties, and the eyes are so important. So that was my big concern going into it, that look didn't overwhelm the character and stop us being able to connect with him. But I think we found a really good balance where it's a very sort of particular kind of commanding look. We know it's Archie, but also it allows me to hopefully convey some subtleties and some of the extraordinary different colors that Tony has given this character.
He is really a character of contradictions in so many ways, and I'm curious how you see his faith. Is he really a true believer, or is he so concerned by how what he doesn't understand about himself that he doesn't really believe?
That's an interesting way to put it. I think both of those things exist. I mean, every human being is full of contradictions, and it's what it is to be human. You have to kind of embrace it. I know that Tony McNamara, who wrote the whole show, his particular interest with Archie was to convey this idea that as a man of God, very high up in the church as a priest, those people are held to a different standard, even than monarchs, I think. The king, the queen, the empress, they're allowed to be human, but somehow when you're sort of head of the church, you're in a different realm. And what Tony was so interested in with Archie was exploring where all the human failings and contradictions and things meet that requirement that you have to be above all of that, but you're still a human being. So in Archie, his issues, the things he's wrestling with, are very powerful. But to answer your question specifically, I think he absolutely is a believer, profoundly, and his whole mission during the series is to fight to retain the primacy of the Russian Orthodox Church in people's lives, because he truly believes that's how society works. And of course, he comes smack up against Catherine, who's wants to change everything. And so that's where it gets interesting and the sparks start to fly. And of course, there are times when he's such a political animal that he sees that there's a useful way to appear to be an ally of hers and appear to be helping her. We very much get that in season 3. But I think Archie is always looking out primarily for the church and will do anything, fight anybody, go anywhere, do anything to preserve that. It's a slightly kind of crazy and perhaps misguided, approach, but it certainly makes for hopefully interesting viewing.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the relationship that he has with Elizabeth because I think they both understand each other and allow each other to see sides that they'd rather. I mean, I think Elizabeth doesn't care who she shares stuff with, but I think at least Archie allows, her to see sides of him that he doesn't want other people to see.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it is around sex. you know, and they get each other. They're both kind of weirdly sort of sex positive in a way, you know, and Archie, who knows? I mean, definitely kind of pansexual, and we don't shy away from any of that stuff. And that definitely is where they both really get each other, and it allows Elizabeth and I to really dive into those scenes and really enjoy them, because we do have this connection. And sometimes sometimes our interests collide, and sometimes you know, they work together. So it's interesting, yeah.
And I think because he's so sexually repressed, he also has some weird stuff with Mariel that he probably shouldn't have. And they have that's another really fascinating relationship because they are so honest with each other and really don't hide what their true aims are.
Yeah, and you know, that's Mariel. Mariel just has no filter at all. It's fantastic. But clearly, yeah, there's something genetic in that family where they just there's no nothing is off limits anywhere in the whole show, really. And that's part of the kind of brilliance of Tony's concept for this show. There's nowhere it won't go.
I think one of the most memorable moments of season three for me is the scene with Pugachev, or the scenes with Pugachev and Archie, and it's a brilliance I think of Nicholas Hoult that it feels like he's such a different actor because he's allowing himself to be vulnerable in a certain way by putting himself out there, but he also knows the power he exerts, which is totally different from what Peter does. What was it like getting to work with him in that specific context?
Well, it's brilliant. You know, he's such a brilliant actor, and he's different as Pugachev on a kind of cellular level. You know, apart from just that, there's minimal adaptation to Nick's look, but the rest is just acting, and I'm acting with a completely different person when I'm, playing with him, and then you add in this kind of fatal attraction that Archie has, that Pugachev understands on some deep level, and they keep playing with, and are they going to go there, and dare they go there, and dare they not? So that whole dynamic was really, really interesting to play, and felt very kind of a subtle thing that we wouldn't just kind of run at and whack it over the head, but we'd sort of just play with it and tease it. So yeah, that was another wonderful, interesting element to play.
At the end of season three, we have writers sent to Siberia and children sent to military school and generals who sort of get pardoned a little bit. And the only real loser in all of this is Archie, who gets, buried alive in this miserable fate. But then we see him, Mariel come to sort of rescue him. What do you make of all that?
It's fascinating, you know, it just leaves the door open for any possibility. Yeah, we think Archie is absolutely done for as the soldiers stand around peeing on his grave at the command of Catherine. But then, yeah, Mariel comes along, and it appears Archie lives for another day. So yeah, that was an interesting scene to film. I personally had great kind of sort of trigger issues about being buried alive. And so we constructed this amazing sort of mechanism to get me buried, but without actually me being 6 feet underground, which I greatly appreciated. But yeah, it was an interesting day shooting that in the woods.
We unfortunately don't have any news yet of season four, but what do you think? Where would Archie be? What would he be doing? I hope he'd be in it, first of all, but what would he be doing?
That's yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of what Tony did with the end of the show, is it leaves anything. It could go anywhere. It could do anything for all of those characters. You know, they're all obviously profoundly affected by Peter's demise in all their different ways. And that played out through obviously the second half of season three. And then by the end, yeah, it could literally go anywhere. It leaves all options open, which I think is a kind of masterstroke.
You also made a memorable appearance in another show this year that I think features probably equally terrible people looking out for their own self-interests. And that, of course, is Succession, which I don't think could be more different from this show just in terms of everything. But I think Darwin he's interesting because he could have a similar power to Archie, that he's the a chief advisor on something of great political consequence. But what was it like being part of the show, and what appealed to you about that character?
Well, a huge fan of the show. We just finished shooting The Great, which is a long shoot, 6 months, and then literally jump on a plane, come to New York, and get to play with that incredible cast of actors who I have such admiration for. And it was such fun, such a different world. The show is shot in a very, very different way to The Great. So that was kind of thrilling. And yes, what absolutely appealed to me was you drop this very, very moral, strictly moral character into the sort of swirling cauldron of the Roys. And my goodness, hugely fun to play. And yeah, and fascinating. And of course, that world that we were in of those people who are the kind of political nerds and the pollsters and so on. Election time is the most fevered time of it comes up every 4 years. Couldn't be more dramatic. The stakes couldn't be higher. So to drop in at a point where the whole thing was kind of swirling and boiling was fascinating. And yeah, I had a great time on it. And Jesse Armstrong obviously is another absolute genius writer and a wonderful cast. So I had a ball throwing off the vestments, ripping off the beard, and jumping into Succession.
And now you're doing something different. You mentioned you're working on a play.
A musical, yes. It's called Once Upon a One More Time. It opens this week on Broadway. And it's set in the world of fairy tales, and it incorporates the music of Britney Spears, written by the brilliant John Hartman. Yeah, and I play this character who's he's the overseer of the whole thing. He's called the narrator. And he has a slightly shorter beard than Archie, but has some of Archie's darkness to him for sure.
Do you feel like you have a different approach when you do live theater versus, a season of TV?
Yes, they're kind of completely different jobs, and you have to approach them completely differently. Even the process of learning is completely different, because on TV we're learning lines, you do it that day and then you let go of it and learn the next bit, whereas I'm holding the whole thing in my head for a play or a musical. And of course we get that direct interaction with the audience, which is so thrilling. But I think what's been particularly sort of wonderful and gratifying with The Great is to get to play something over a number of seasons. We all get very, very comfortable with each other. You could see that in Succession with that cast, with the central cast, and certainly on The Great. We got to know each other. We got to trust each other. You can take everything much, much further because it's just that deep level of comfort. So yeah, it's the kind of collegiate atmosphere of all of those things is wonderful to be a part of.
I hope we'll have news soon of season 4, and that we'll get to see Archie in some way.
Yeah, in some form or other, either in the back of a cave plotting against Elizabeth or whatever. Yeah.
I think he might have to shave. I think we might have to see him in a very different way, which would be hard but also enlightening.
Yes, and certainly much less time and makeup every morning.
So everybody wins, well, except for Archie,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Adam, and good luck with this musical.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you.